We don't know who is behind this. That's got to be frustrating, but I think we do have some clues, that's the way I would put it, because there is a backdrop for this, right? I mean, about a month prior to this, you had written a piece on your website in which you discussed your registration as a lobbyist. And you said you register as a lobbyist, and you're okay with that because you have to represent the views of other people in front of the legislature.
That's right.
Of pro-life folks in front of the legislature, but you singled out a certain person for not doing that. Tell us about that.
Well, there's an organization called Empower Texans, and their person who heads that up is Michael Quinn Sullivan. And I had known him for many years, been in a lot of meetings with him, but apparently for several years he did register as a lobbyist. But more recently, and I believe those years are 2011 and 2012, he decidedly did not register as a lobbyist. One of the members of the legislature, I think, made a sworn complaint about that issue. That case went before the Texas Ethics Commission, and they pretty recently ruled that indeed, based on their facts that they had been presented to them, that, and I'm not an expert in that whole process, but just reading their statement, that Michael Quinn Sullivan should have registered as a lobbyist. He failed to for those 2 years, had registered before, and they fined him. And I started thinking, I wonder if people think that it's a terrible thing to register as a lobbyist. And I started looking around, and goodness, I've been registering as a lobbyist since, 1995, I think. And I started thinking, it's a very simple process because we're very similar to Empower Texans in the sense that we're a 501c4 organization that does lobby. At least he lobbied by his own admission, at least for a few years. We have to register as a lobbyist. In fact, it costs $150. I do an application in January. The following January, I do one report. It takes all of about 20 minutes for each of those reports.
It's not some onerous process.
Not an onerous process.
As far as anybody can tell, the difference between the lobbying that you started doing many years ago and continue to do, and the lobbying that Michael Quinn Sullivan used to do as a registered lobbyist, and allegedly still does without registering. As far as anybody can tell, the only thing that changed in the whole equation is that he stopped registering. He still does all the same things.
Well, that's apparently the case from the Texas Ethics Commission complaint, and he was fined $5,000 a year, $10,000 total. What is lobbying? Well, if mom and pop from Dallas or San Antonio or the Valley or El Paso decide to get in their car and come to the Capitol because they want to support House Bill 2, they're doing that on their own dime. They are not. No one's paying them to do it. That's not lobbying under the law in such that you are required to be a lobbyist. You have to be paid. I'm an executive director, I'm paid to do this, and one of the things I do is lobby the Capitol. I have several staff who do that also. So we pay that $150 for each of us who lobby. We're paid to do that more than, I guess, $500 every couple months or something like that. So
there's a threshold,
There's a threshold, and we meet that, and so we file that report. This does not affect mom and pop. This doesn't limit them at all. They're not paid, or they're not giving gifts or something to the elected officials. They're here because they believe it. They come and get in their car, pay for their own gas, all that. That is lobbying in its purest form, but it doesn't require being registered as a lobbyist. So we do register, and it struck me as I didn't want people to be confused and have to think that they have to be a lobbyist. So I pointed out in this blog post on our website, TexasAllianceForLife.org, I'm a lobbyist, I'm fine with that, and here's how this process is very easy to do.
Sullivan and his supporters would say that this amounts to a speech registry, this idea of having to register as a lobbyist, and they say that's an infringement on the First Amendment. But you don't feel that your First Amendment rights are in any way infringed, or other people either?
I was very interested to look at the Texas Ethics Commission final statement and to see what is the basis, the legal basis, court cases, statutes that Michael Quinn Sullivan and his attorneys gave as a reason. According to the Ethics Commission, he gave no court cases in federal or state court cases to justify that claim. I wanted to make sure that mom and pop out there aren't frightened for coming to Austin and expressing their views. So I just don't see it.
Because there's really no reason for them to be afraid. They
Well,
can get in. They can get in the car. They can come to the
Exactly.
Capitol, and they can testify at
Mom
a
and Pop
hearing
can.
or protest with a sign or
And
anything.
those of us who, everybody's free to do that. The process is so open. Anybody can walk into any committee hearing and testify on any bill that they wish. It's so much more open than the Congress, where I think you have to be subpoenaed to be essentially to be.
That doesn't happen in Washington. Yeah, this is very different.
In Texas,
Yeah.
Joe Citizen can walk in and get involved in the process.
I've seen it all the time, but people
All
sign
the time,
up, and
absolutely.
and they may have 300 people sign up for something. They might have 5 people sign up.
We
for
had
something.
on
Depends
House
what
Bill
it is.
2, there were 1,000 people
Right.
who signed up in favor of this bill.
Lines out the building.
Right.
Yeah.
In favor of it. And then there were 2,000 against it. 3,000 people voiced it, and almost none of them were paid lobbyists. But those few of us who are paid to lobbyists, then I think it's important to know, the public has a right to know what's the money behind that. Okay, because we do have a lot of influence, because we know the process, we're doing this for a living.
Right.
I think the public has a right to know, and the legislature to know, and the media, who is behind, what money is paying for it. Now, to be a registered lobbyist, do I have to report my donors? I do not. I do not have to report my donors who are paying for our lobbying. But I have to report, and if I spend money on the elected officials, I have to report that.
Right.
Meals, trips, and so forth. Well, frankly, we do very little of that.
Don't do much of that.
But the point is, that's, I think, fair to ask for the public to have access to that information. And for the point I made, it's not expensive, it's not hard to fill out the forms, it's just not very burdensome. So I just don't see any reason why anyone would not want to file these reports. It just makes no sense, and there doesn't seem to be any basis in statute, in our laws, or in court cases that would give me a reason to not have to do that.
And not only is it not harmful, but you also made the point that it is helpful. It creates a process that works, to bring it back to your issue, that works for pro-life issues. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, there's not just Texas Alliance for Life, Michael Quinn Sullivan's groups, and a number of other groups who may be supporting bills or opposing bills that I'm involved with. There is the lobbyists for the abortion industry, and they've been at it, probably paid a whole lot more than my staff is. They have a lot more resources, and I think the public has a right to know if those folks are opposing the bills or supporting some of their others. I think the public has a right to know that. If we didn't have that reporting, there's very higher likelihood for money to be spent in a way that's not helpful, that's harmful. Quid pro quo vote buying. If we don't have a way to track the big money, then the public doesn't have a way to keep that in check. And how do you keep that in check? Well, you vote the bums out if you see that there's funny stuff going on. Without this kind of reporting, we can't have a clean process, and we cannot pass bills to protect mothers and unborn babies, vulnerable patients, unless we have a clean process. So that's why I feel very passionate that we have to have that kind of reporting, minimal as it is. We really need that. That's in the interests of the pro-life movement to have those regulations that require that kind of information.
All right, Joe Poyman, Executive Director of Texas Alliance for Life. We're going to continue to track these issues, and we appreciate you letting us come into your office and visit about this.
Thanks for having me.